So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar today. As most of you will know, we are PushON. We're an e-commerce agency. We build on Magento and Shopify, and we do e-commerce marketing. We also like to help our businesses with growth as well, and we like to sort of bring some real expertise. So we share lots of information. Now, Vlad, who you can see on the screen, is a good old friend of the business. We accidentally met each other when we were sort of business neighbours during COVID. It was very much masked, I can assure you. We moved into places next door to them, and I got to see the kind of work he was doing in 3D and augmented reality, and the sheer depth of knowledge that he has. I was doing some real world events after lockdown, and I had a presenter pull out very, very short notice. So with about 2 hours to go before the event, I knocked on Vlad's door and asked him if he'd got something that he could show. He then bashed something together, and it was probably the best presentation we'd ever had in that series of events, all about the possibilities of 3D, augmented reality, the whole virtual piece. I don't think there are many in the game who've got more understanding and importantly vision than Vlad. So Vlad has got something like 20 years experience playing with 3D AR, AI as well. He is your man. So Vlad, better me not rattle on. Perhaps you take over from here, and the floor is yours. Oh, before I do, people, please do think of some questions for Vlad. I really want to test his knowledge because he will have the answer. Over to you, Vlad.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Simon, PushON, thank you guys for having me. It's always a real pleasure to work with you. So yeah, as Simon said, we met in the days of COVID when actually commerce was trying to find its way to move the physical into the digital. And that kind of brought 3D to the forefront really, but I've been working in 3D for the last 22 years. I started out in CGI, which is just rendering images and photography replacement with computer generated images. And a lot of that uses 3D. But today I'm going to talk to you more about the applications of 3D as it really should be done in a more immersive, more interactive way. I think one of the important things to highlight is obviously you see this guy walking in London with his CyberDog and his Apple Vision Pro. It's probably not going to look like that, but the way we interact with computers is changing. I think we're all accustomed to working on screens, phones, but I think that's just the beginning, and it's the way it is because that's what we could do at the time. And I'm old enough to remember how things used to look like in the 90s, and that gives me kind of the ability to see how things are gonna evolve. And it's only been half a lifetime since these things started, and your world, e-commerce, is a new world that's been brought on by this. So I'm going to cover a few concepts. Some of them are a little bit more futuristic, others are more relevant to today. I'm going to go through three parts for you. It's kind of the what. I'll cover on the why 3D, and then how. How can you implement it in the real world? So I'll start with more of like the vision piece and where things are going. And I'll just strip it back down to the basics. I apologize if some of you might know about this stuff already. I just need to cover it for everyone else. So what is AR? What's VR? What's mixed reality? What's spatial computing? There's lots of terms flying around. Just to simplify a little bit, let's start with VR. So virtual reality, you see this cool dude here. He's playing Beat Saber. Beat Saber is a game that you can play VR. And you put on a headset because you've got two eyes. You've got two little screens, and it fools your brain into thinking you're immersed. It's stereo, but it's actually two screens. And they're using the same tech that you use in normal gaming on screen. But it achieves something magical. It fools your brain into thinking you are in a place. And that's what VR is. You disappear completely in a virtual world and you end up looking like this guy. So that's kind of VR in a simple concept. Someone's lost their sound. Can anyone else confirm that you can still hear me?
Yeah, it's all good. I can hear you.
Oh, okay, so moving on. Augmented reality. Augmented reality is when you put virtual objects onto the real world. And this is an example that's going to become more relevant later on. Augmented reality can be consumed through headsets as well, but also through phones and tablets. And it just lets you superimpose 3D objects or virtual objects onto the real world. And it's so advanced today that it actually looks seamless. When you move around, it actually stays in place. It's not just hovering around. There's also augmented reality in terms of filters. And if you have Snapchat, you would have seen these. You can augment your face. You can wear makeup. You can wear glasses. You can try things on, or you can look like a silly cat or a Disney character like this guy. So there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of crossover with AI. A lot of this is computer vision AI, but people don't really see it as AI because AI now is all about chatbots, but that's another subject. So mixed reality gets confused with AR a little bit. And actually, to me, they're kind of almost overlapping terms. Mixed reality is where the object's not just superimposed, it actually blends in the environment and you can place it in the environment. It knows where it's placed and where it stays and can actually be occluded by things in the real world. So if you have this, educational skeleton, you could put it behind a table. And you can see the guys controlling it with his hands, so it's a lot more immersive. So that's kind of, I think to me, they're kind of overlapping and they'll converge into one, and AI will just either disappear or they'll both be called the one thing. So it's augmenting the real world with virtual objects. And we know that Apple Vision Pro released the spatial computing, but spatial computing is pretty much mixed reality. They're just marketing it in a different way just because they're Apple. But you end up looking like this guy. Well, I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to put your eyes seeing through the visor because it just looks. I don't know if it adds anything, but another topic. So the gear, I'm going to go through all the devices that are kind of prominent out there. There's lots more devices that I'm not covering, but these are kind of the key ones that are pioneering the way forward in the hardware space and obviously creating platforms as they go along. And it's not, some people think it's niche, but I always say that in my talks, last year there were about 170 million mixed reality headsets overall, mixed reality users worldwide using these particular headsets. There's a lot more using phones, but the headsets, there were 170 million internet users in 1997. Please don't quote me on that. So just think about the growth trajectory of that. And I've posted a few LinkedIn posts about this, just kind of showing where we are in that growth curve. And it didn't take very long for things to take over, like mobile phones. Just think how quickly they took over a large user base when they became usable and convenient. So the first one is Meta Quest. So you might have heard this. Meta bought a company called Oculus. They invested a lot of money in the ecosystem, and this is one of the most affordable consumer VR headsets. There's a lot of game titles, but it's also becoming more used in business. So there's a lot of productivity applications appearing. And obviously, there's potential for implementing this in retail. Downside being it's a bit insular, as you've seen before in the meme. You are kind of isolated. But what they did with Meta Quest 3 is they added mixed reality. So these cameras at the front that you see there, they let you see through to the real world. And you could actually do this whole mixed reality piece quite well, actually, quite high resolution, high fidelity. They're cameras feeding the real world to your eyes through the screens, but then that lets you put virtual objects into it. And it's quite, you need to try to actually understand it. None of the screen records can give it any justice. We then have the Apple Vision Pro. So obviously these guys always wait a little bit for the trend to start, and then they jump in with a really cool product. They've invested tons of money into this, but it's not as affordable as a Meta Quest. Having said that, you are getting the quality for the money. I've tried one of these. I had the fortune to try that in the UK, I think about a month ago, and it's like Porsche versus Volkswagen. You're paying the money for the quality. There's no lag. The interactions are seamless. You use your hands to interact with things. If you ever get the chance, I would recommend to anyone to try this. There's obviously other people. Barrio, these guys are Norwegian, if I'm not wrong. It's a very sexy industrial product with really high resolution, and it's used for industrial purposes, for flight simulators and things like that. But the quality is absolutely amazing, and a lot of that world, the industrial world, in the industrial design world, is moving on into that space and spending a lot of money in that space. So, and things always start like that. They start with that kind of industry, and then they move through to consumer. This HoloLens from Microsoft, that's a different tech. So it's kind of projecting onto a glass piece, and it's got limited field of view. So I think that tech is evolving, but very slowly because of the problem with the hardware. It's really difficult to put a tiny screen in front of your eyes and miniaturize the whole thing. And then there's obviously Magic Leap. But all of these are, I would say, early versions of prototypes. Imagine or think back to your CRT monitor, those of you who are old enough to remember the big chunky CRT monitors and how they've evolved to a thing in your pocket that has really high resolution. I think they're trying to set a vision for what this might look like in the future, where you've got glasses that are completely seamless, lightweight, but can actually do full mixed reality. We're quite far from this in terms of mass adoption or even evolution of it to be useful enough, but they're just trying to be ahead of the game. And Snap Inc. have been pioneers in the AR space with all of their lenses. So there's a lot of investment in the space. So obviously, breathe, relax. We're not there yet. These are all, I would call them, very expensive futuristic prototypes to gain traction, to kind of create an ecosystem. You need to do that in the hardware space. There's a lot of engineering that goes into these headsets and what challenges. Having said that, I think we've seen how quickly technology evolves. And one day we will be there, not too long from now. For now, though, we've got one in our pockets, an AR device that is perfectly capable of doing augmented reality. And it's in everyone's pocket. And most of advanced phones adopted this functionality during COVID. And that's why I'm going back to COVID. A lot of the companies like Google and Apple invested in standardizing AR functionality in their modern phones. So as you can see here, they use a lot of AI to track the space, to find out where the floor is and position things real time, quite accurately, as you move your phone. And actually adopted some standards as well, which I'm going to talk about later. So this really opens up the door for AR and commerce at scale. It's being used by quite a few people. I think this is an IKEA example. IKEA have been doing this for a long time. And they've always pioneered this space. And you should try it out. I think it's quite useful, especially for things that you really want to see in your space, to scale, size, and so focusing on phones, tablets, and desktops is what we can do in the now. So let's get a little bit more practical about it. So what are the key things that really apply to commerce and retail online? Well, these are kind of categories that I've given some names to, or they are common names. For example, 3D commerce is the standard name for anything to do with AR and 3D in retail, especially interactive viewers for 3D models or augmented reality products on the phone. AR try-on has to do with anything that you wear. So you could try on glass frames, glasses, or you could try on jewelry, makeup, clothes, and footwear. And these are all applications that are gaining traction and are becoming quite usable. AR in your space, obviously going back to things that you place in your surroundings, see it in your space, really important for certain products. 3D configurators, where you've got something that's got lots of components that you might want to customize before you buy, and it allows you to see that, change the color of the thing. And then there's an honorable mention of the Snap lenses. So Snap lenses can do a lot of these things within the Snap ecosystem, and now they've opened up the technology so you can use that technology to build directly on the web, not having to be confined to Snapchat. But both channels, I think, are becoming interesting, especially with social commerce. So if you combine social commerce with Snapchat with lenses, is quite a powerful combination for certain products that you might want to see, and some unusual applications like beauty and makeup, which are gaining traction as well. So I'll start with 3D commerce. So 3D commerce basically means you have a 3D model of your product. You place it in your PDP. The customer can see that on their phone or on a desktop in a little window right next to the other content. You might have images, you might have video. This is an extra bit of content. It embeds into most modern browsers through a standard format, which I'll cover in a minute. And also allows you to view in AR on most modern phones. And these phones have been around since 2019 or just before COVID, and then they gained traction. So I think there's a lot of user adoption in that space. It's not as niche as it used to be. So most phones will be capable of displaying this stuff. And obviously that links into AR in your space. So it's linked to 3D commerce, but basically you can deliver it not only on the screen in sort of like a white background or some sort of environment, but in your space and place it. And you can see the lighting is adopted. There's a bit of a shadow. It's to scale. You can move it around. It recognizes surfaces and all of that on a modern phone. And I'll talk to you about how to do this a little bit later on, but it's not that difficult to achieve. And then you've got try-ons. So this is an example from Valentino. Obviously, with clothes, you've got the challenge of do they fold correctly on the body? Do they fit properly? Things are moving fast in that direction, quality and the fidelity of the presentation. So see, that's a little bit harder to achieve because you're tracking maybe a wrist for a watch or a hand for some jewelry or a face for the glasses. But all of these things are AI advancements that have become almost embedded in all our devices and phones. So they're becoming very, very accessible. And then you've got 3D configurators. So this is an example where the games engine is used to give this ultra photorealistic appearance. And a games engine can be used to create these experiences and serve them on the web. There's a little caveat, I'll talk about it later. But you can also do real-time experiences on the web, maybe to a lesser fidelity than this, but still able to change materials, colors, and components of the product to give a personalized experience. So that's another component. And then obviously snap lenses. You all know Snapchat, younger generations very much into this. You can augment your face, you can add silly things, gamify stuff, but also it's used for serious applications like try-ons and placing things in your environment in AR. So the question always that people always ask me, even though I'm convinced about the utility of this on a deeper level, but why? Why do we need all this? Why do we need 3D? Is it not just a nice to have? Why do we need to go through all the effort? We've got pictures, we've got videos. It's fine, they sell stuff. Well, they don't. Challenge with conversion is real. We are 3D people. We are 3D creatures. We've been shopping thousands of years in shops, in markets, in the physical world. We inspect the thing before we decide to buy it. This world of digital buying is new to us. So how do we see the stuff that we're buying? It's a very simple concept. And the more you see, the more confident you are in buying it. Therefore, the more likely to buy it, rather than having to check out the physical thing or buy it and then return it because you don't like it or it's not what you expected. Just very simple concept. But how can we translate that in the digital world? Well, here's some stats and why it's good for you or good for retail. Retail utilizing AR, so increasing engagement, so various degrees of increasing engagement, but it's all there. This one's from Vertebrae, so obviously they might be a little bit biased because they do also offer an augmented reality platform. Conversion rate increases, so up to 94% for products in VR and AR content, and that's by Shopify. You've got 40% of shoppers would pay more for a product if they could experience it through AR. So obviously, I'm expecting categories that are really visual, like furniture, for example, would really benefit from this. And that's by a study from Deloitte. And the number, like I mentioned before, consumers worldwide using AR frequently is expected to grow. That's because they can use it on their phone. They don't need the headsets just yet. They don't need the glasses. It's all there. And everyone's got a phone. So there's good stats out there confirming what I truly believe anyway, which is that 3D and AR can really boost performance in e-commerce when used correctly. So what are the ingredients? How do we get there? What do we need to do to actually implement this stuff? So the core ingredient, obviously the third part, is content. You need content. How do we get that content? What do we do? Well, the key, the cornerstone is the 3D model. So 3D model, just, forgive me if you already know this stuff. The 3D models actually been around since the time of Pixar. Pixar invented a way to kind of represent something in 3D space with points and coordinates, and then connect them with triangles, which are surfaces, and then render them by applying simulated light to it, and then obviously applying materials on top of that, simulation of what the color looks like, what the reflection looks like. And all of this is done in a rendering engine so that you can consume it in some form. So rendering engines for a long time used to just be used in movies. A frame of a movie would take days to render, like if you look at Avatar, for example. But all of this tech, as with all tech, is become more accessible to a lower level of device, to the point where you can render something fairly decent at a high frame rate in real time. And that's where you get this interactive stuff where you can spin it around. It's actually rendering every frame in the magical devices in our pockets. So how do we get these 3D models? The traditional creation or content creation involves people like myself, 3D artists, modelers, whole teams of people to create these things in specialized software. And there's a little process here you can see in the video. You can start with the model, you then apply the materials to the model, you texture them, you verify that it looks right, lots of iterations, tests. Everything's fairly manual. I mean, there's a lot of shortcuts. So obviously, it's a digital content creation software, so it's not like you're chiseling a sculpture, but there's still a lot of work involved, and it's highly specialized. So the cost can vary depending on complexity, and obviously the output, the quality of the output can vary depending on who you're working with. So that's traditional creation. Traditional creation has been augmented by technologies. So photogrammetry is a scanning technology. That's the next kind of wave of things that came around to enable people to capture real things. And here's a very interesting, geeky looking rig, robotic rig that lets you take lots of pictures of anything. Those pictures are then fed into a special software that reconstructs the geometry, the 3D volume of the thing, and its color, its textures and materials quite faithfully. But again, it still needs that post-processing manual labor to make it look good. Things are getting a little bit more automated, but it's got its shortcomings. One of the key things here, it struggles with glass, it struggles with shiny objects, it struggles with anything that's super detailed like fur or fine-grained textures of things. So it's still not quite automated as we would like it to be, so that we can create 3D quite easily. There's obviously specialized 3D scanning. These are devices that have been around in the industry for a while, but again, now becoming cheaper and easier to use. But again, you need specialist knowledge, you need the device, and then obviously need a team of people afterwards to post-process and again, make the thing usable on the web, make it look good. So there's steps to the process, even though it's easier than just manually creating it from scratch. And then there's the new stuff. This is really exciting. This new technology, it's related to radiance fields, very geeky term, but the concept comes from machine learning. It's using gradient descent for optimizing every point in space and the color and the depth of that point in space, and giving you real-time reconstruction of the thing. Apart from the geeky side of it, the good thing is that it deals with reflections, it deals with glass, it deals with things that couldn't be used or done before in 3D. and it gives you a real-time output, so you can actually publish this on the web and see it on a phone. This is something new and exciting that we are working on at the moment. So basically, I'll just play the videos. Using this new technology, take a video, walk around your object. Obviously, there's a little bit of effort involved. You then upload it to our platform. And within half an hour, you get ultra high fidelity 3D of anything. And you can, that's a real recording of real-time use on the phone. And it can be embedded, published anywhere. So this is where things are going in terms of 3D. And then obviously from that point, how do you deliver this stuff? So aside from this new tech, this last bit, which is really the cutting edge, and it's really, really exciting because I've been in this world for so many years and I've been waiting for this thing to be unlocked, really, is how do we deliver it? So on the web, as I mentioned before, you need a rendering engine. Most of our browsers and phones have this stuff built in. So obviously, anything from Chrome to Safari has something called WebGL built in. WebGL is the thing that renders not only 3D, but your 2D canvas, your images, a lot of graphics. So this stuff is hard to code. A lot of platforms out there do it. You know, you've got like, I'll subscribe to a SaaS platform and we'll give you a viewer. On top of WebGL sit these frameworks, A-Frame, Babylon.js, Play Canvas, and 3.js. They are sort of abstractions of WebGL that allow you to develop 3D really quickly. So this, from a development point of view, really unlocks it because you can use this tech to build 3D viewers that use standardized 3D models on any website. So you can actually build a strategy and build your own custom viewers for your customers, and it's not that expensive. But there's also ready-made SaaS platforms that you can just consume and embed. So it's kind of two ways of doing it. Don't be afraid to actually approach it from a consultancy point of view, approach an agency that does real-time 3D. They usually, you know, will have WebGL or 3.js in their description, or real-time 3D, Web 3D. All of these fall in that boat. And the quality is getting much better now. So all the modern browsers support it. File formats, so these are the standard file formats that came out of that whole COVID pandemic time of pushing to the world of 3D commerce. And basically on the left, you have GLTF. This is a standard that's been supported by a group called the Kronos Group. So obviously it sounds very like Marvel comics level organization, but they are basically a consortium of different companies that try and standardize the 3D format, and they've come up with GLTF, which to me is the JPEG of 3D. The standard format that's just supported out of the box. Comes with its geometry, with its textures, it's got some standards that they have to comply with, so all the viewers have to comply with that standard. And then it becomes more standard, like the JPEG. You can display JPEGs anywhere, but back in the day when JPEG wasn't a thing, you needed viewers for it, you needed the browser to support it, all this, so that's coming. And then obviously Apple, being Apple, came up with their own version of it, which is USDZ, so they're not part of it. But you can convert between the two. And both of them, so the USDZ format, you can actually see on the phone. If I send you a USDZ format file on a text message, you literally see it in AR and in 3D. And the same with GLTF on the Android phones. And if you want both, you need a bit of work, but that's not that difficult to convert between the two. The downside is that the content creation for these two formats is still the challenge that I talked about. Aside from this new stuff that we're kind of working on, all the way, you still need to produce the content somehow. So there's not that many shortcuts. It's a little bit limited because you can't really do glass, you can't do shiny objects unless you get people involved in that process. So, but still, this is the most common format for the time. You've got cloud streaming. So you saw this car, really good looking photorealistic car. Now, to serve that level of fidelity. You can't render it in the browser because, like, my laptop might have the power to render it, but someone else's laptop doesn't. So the web rendering engines go on the lowest common denominator of features. Whereas games engines that render on a gamer graphics card can render the full kind of glory of simulated light, reflections, and that's why they look amazing. So that configurator looking that amazing with the car paint, the flex in the car paint. You can only do that on a powerful computer, but not everyone's got one. So how do we actually deliver this to customers? Well, I've worked on projects where we've built it in a games engine, like Unreal Engine, which people say games, but it's actually serious business. A lot of the car companies are just using this to render their products and stream it from the cloud as a streaming session, WebRTC, just like this call, stream it to the consumer, and then they can interact with it, and that interaction is just fed back 2 ways, and they're literally just playing that game or that experience in the cloud, but it's game streamed back through a web frame to their browser, so to them it's seamless. There is a cost involved. It's pay as you go because you're paying the cloud people for the compute power, but actually the experiences are worthwhile for like big things. For example, anything environmentally based or car high value items, interiors. That's where it really comes into its full strength. If you go later on my LinkedIn profile, there's a link to a project there that's quite relevant to this, but maybe not so much to the direct to consumer or wider consumer retail space. And then there's embedded viewers. So we're going back to Baby Yoda, which commonly misnamed. So this is actually embedded in this PowerPoint presentation, and I'm literally just now spinning it around and going, whoops, I can't zoom in because my scrolly thing doesn't allow me, but if you zoom in, you'll see the threads, and I can send you a link later. Check it out. So, a bit of a break, relax, think of some questions to fire at me. We've got a few more minutes. Yeah, this is, to me, this has always been obvious as the future of the way we interact with content and computers. We just weren't able to do it because our tech wasn't there from a hardware perspective. But now it's becoming more and more commonplace. And again, if you're old enough, you remember this is what computing was in 1997. I mean, I've still got some T-shirts from 1997, so it's a bit ironic how quickly things have moved from those days. And then not too long, and you got 2007. This is when the whole smartphone thing started. There's billions of smartphone users. I mean, it's crazy how quickly things have evolved. And all of these machines in our pockets have a lot more power than those computers back in 1997. They've got AI out of the box. They can track our environment. Some of them have LiDAR scanners on the back, which is like a laser scanner that can just map your whole environment. And this is just starting in people's pockets, and I don't think they're being used properly. I don't think they're being used to their full potential. And then we've got this. So these people pioneering this hardware, sometimes getting ridiculed because obviously it looks like that. I take them back to, well, this is what your computer looked like in 1997. So what do you expect? It's not going to be like sci-fi neural link to your brain from day one trying to develop. But if you've tried one of these things, actually the experience is quite amazing. They're just trying to make it so good that then it becomes more adopted and create an ecosystem around it. But this will come. And you will need the content. You will need 3D. You won't be able to just get away with pictures. And maybe this is what it's going to look like in 2033. I mean, this is AI-generated image of some AR goggles that I thought maybe that's what they're going to look like. I'm hoping they're going to look better. And this is a bit just to inspire everyone what the future might look like. This is actually an experience from the Apple Vision Pro, but this is someone configuring a car. They're having a look. They're using their hands. and then they sat on a chair and the car just appears around them, which is a viable. I've tried not this experience, but similar experience where I was pulling a Formula One car apart in Apple Vision Pro. It's incredible, but it's only translatable if you use the device. When you look at it on the screen, it just doesn't do it justice. So I believe that this future is around the corner, and I believe it's going to happen faster than the last 10 years of progress, because we can see everything's becoming more and more exponential. So I think, brands and retailers should get ready about, at least start using this, start playing with it, so that they've got the experience, the expertise, the metrics to justify that to their boards, all of that good work. So time for questions. I don't know how to receive questions, so maybe a little bit of help.
There's the meeting chat. You should see a chat
meeting
dialogue
chat.
at the top.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's been quite some good chat going on. Seem to be some very interested people. I'll come back with a quick question.
Yeah, do you mind
cost.
rating the questions for me? Cost. Well,
cost. So previously, when we were looking at doing some stuff on some client work, we were looking at 100 grand to start off just to get hold of the kit to do it. And when you're talking about household goods, it's a hell of a lot of goods you've got to sell to actually break even on the cost of deploying it. So using the tech that you're playing with, what you're sort of like looking at delivery of a per item piece.
Yeah, so cost to make stuff, just making the content, can vary from 50 quid to 5 grand, depending on complexity of the thing. And some things are just impossible to make for real time and make them look good. That's the manual or semi-manual approach. With scanning, traditional scanning, you can reduce that bit, but you still need that cost. And then you've got the cost of the various platforms that are out there to service. Obviously, whoever quoted this to you was charging for their platform and for you to use their embedded viewer or their kind of integrations to various e-com platforms, so that you can see that in the PDP. So that varies as well. There's lots of different platforms out there that will do this, but they're all based fundamentally on the technologies that I showed you, so you can do that in-house build. The new tech that I'm looking at really drastically drops the cost to we're talking pounds,
As in single pounds, single digit
pounds per model, half an hour in the cloud from a video to 3D model. And then for the serving and the storage cost, you've got like a regular subscription. That's not in the, not even in the thousands, depending on how many products. So obviously, if you're only hosting 100 products, you'll be like 20, 30 quid a month plus the cost to produce each model. It's really getting democratized, and it's really going to a place where it's got to become as common as images and video. And I think that's a good place to be, because it enhances the user experience and the shopping experience, and eventually prepares people for that next wave, because they'll have the content ready. So yeah, if that answers the question.
So we have a joint question from Andy Jones and R. Alex. How do you measure the impact of utilizing the technology to put a business case together? And Alex expands on that as what tools need to be used to measure the impact. Can it integrate with common tools like GA4? So I guess that is how you put the object on the website and measure its impact. There would be flat, it would convert at whatever. With the 3D thing, over a period of time, we managed to increase conversion by some percentage.
You measure in the same way you would measure any other A/B test. You integrate into your standard PDP as a viewer, and then when people want to consume that in AR, they'll inevitably have to press a link, and that link fires it up on their phones. They can scan a QR code. So if I'm the user experience, if I'm on a desktop looking at PDP and I click the 3D, I can spin the 3D online, so you can measure that part, and then obviously you can measure the bit where you scan the QR code to see it on your phone and in AR, or on the phone you press the AR button and that fires the AR experience. You can see dwell times, and obviously you can start measuring, well, did this product start converting a bit more because I did this with A/B testing. So start with a small pilot. I think small pilot on something where you can't statistically measure, so not always just the best performing product because they'll perform well anyway. But kind of across a range of products, do 10, do 50. I mean, it's not that expensive to try anyway. So do a few, see what the uplift is, and then you've got a case.
What other questions do we have? We have both Roy and Sam typing away there. Mark from WDS was mentioning that they're already doing some 3D stuff. If I recall, Mark, a lot of that is manufacturer rendered stuff. I just wonder what the business case might be for. I would guess something in situ that is maybe it's a piece of engineering where it doesn't necessarily come with that pre-rendered piece that an architect might use. Any thoughts around that, specifically around engineering?
So if you have models, they need to get obviously rendered. So you've got a render there. Someone's put that through a rendering engine to get one single image. You need to create these standardized GLTF files to then see in a standard online viewer. So there's a process there. Some of it can be automated, but this is kind of exploring the traditional pathway because you already have CADs, so you have models. Again, that can be done, but that's more of a bespoke case. Whereas if you have the physical object and you just want to scan it in 3D, that's kind of cheaper in a way. Even though you've got the 3D CADs and the renders, you scan using this new tech, you scan the object. The cost might be lower than converting that CAD to your 3D. Having said that, it's not always easy to get the physical product, and there's a cost involved in the doing of the doing. So there's balances, and there's ways that you can automate the conversion of the 3D models to this standardized format to make it cheaper. Serving it is an exercise of embedding a viewer in the website, the PDP. So that's I think that's a lot easier to do than the content management and the production of the content. I hope that answers the question, but we can have a chat separately.
So Roy asks in the chat, how accurate is the object scaling now? We've all seen stories of people buying tables off eBay only to take delivery and realize it's for a doll's house.
Yeah, well, the scaling when it comes to the technology that we're exploring is accurate because it's using the depth of it's using metric depth from the phone or using metric depth from using AI to produce metric depth of the 2D footage, which then gives you accurate measurements of the actual 3D, and then you can place it in AR. So that's avoidable and automatable. When it comes to manual production, obviously things need to be scaled correctly in the production software. Usually most of them have units of measurement like centimeters, and it's a manual exercise and a quality control exercise. But yeah, you can get physical scale things, even though it's
Cool. Do we have any more questions from people? I'm not seeing anybody typing. So Vlad, how do people get hold of you?
So we'll swipe to the next slide. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. That's my preferred method of comms. Send me a message, organize a call. I always like chatting to people about this, as you can see, probably too much, but yeah, happy to share my knowledge with you guys. I really want to see more of this online. That's kind of my mission.
If anybody wants an introduction, you can come through me or anybody you know of the team as well. Vlad, it's always great seeing you speak because no matter how many times I've seen you do this, there's always something else in there I just think is genuinely exciting. I think there's a massive competitive opportunity. I mean, my focus is e-commerce, as always. I'm always thinking, how can our clients make more money if they can convert better? And with the cost per object potentially being in the pounds, That's frighteningly interesting. So thank you once again. We'll get this drawn up. We'll stick it on YouTube, and if you want to watch again, we'll make sure that you can see it's available then. So once again, thank you for everybody who's come along. Vlad, thank you for speaking, and
Thank you.
let's hope we see some of this in the real world, in the virtual world soon.
Thanks everyone for
Right.
attending. Thank you.